Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is the 6th episode of the Adam Lou Show. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, an actress, a writer. She does a bunch of things, blogger. But first, let's cue the music. Go.
Turn it up a little bit. Check this out. Is this good?
1, 2, 3.
When the bombs are rolling, got my shoes tied to the other. Like
Okay, hello, this is the Adam Lou Show. You can visit my website, aml-creative.com. Go to my Instagram, AdamLou22. Facebook, I'm on everything. You can subscribe to this show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on YouTube. I'm joined by a special guest, Nicole Bates. Nicole, how's it going?
It's going great. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's a rainy day, though. It's kind of
Yeah, I kind of like rainy days sometimes, though.
Really?
You know, because then it's kind of an excuse to do nothing.
Okay, I like that. But
I guess I'm doing something today.
You are doing something. I sleep in extra on rainy days, and I get kind of depressed. I'm not gonna lie. But we don't have to get into that. But Nicole, tell the listeners, what do you do, and like where can they find you?
So, like Adam said, I do a bunch of things. I'm an actor, writer. I play music as well. And you can find me on Instagram at Nicole Bates _ and also on YouTube. My YouTube is just Nicole Bates. And I recently did a film called Fireplace, which you can catch on YouTube, that Adam was also a part of. He was our sound guy. So, yeah.
Yep, I held the boom microphone and we had some tough scenes where Tyler had to back up, and like you guys were like, you and Alex were like arguing, and I had to like. It was tough. It was tough maneuvering, folks, okay? It takes someone with high skill to do, okay?
No, yeah,
Not to
that had
brag.
some choreography involved for everyone.
It did. But that was a great scene, so that was great. But yeah, and you're an actress, right?
Yes.
And I don't know anything about acting. I had one of my film teachers once said to me, though, because I want to be a filmmaker, he said, you should take an acting class so, you know, the actors... You know what it's like, and they kind of respect you more to do that. But like, for me, who knows nothing about it, like what are like kind of the basics that people who don't know should know about it?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that's a good point. As a director, you need to know about acting because you're directing actors. And if you don't know anything about acting, that can definitely form a barrier between you and the actors, I think. But yeah, what to know about acting. There's so much to know. I mean, there's so many different methods and approaches that different actors take. Even the difference between theater and film acting is shockingly very different. I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize that, but it takes a totally different skill set to act on the stage versus acting on camera, because the camera is so close up to you. It picks up subtle things that you do, whereas on stage you have to be so larger than life because you know, you're acting to people that are 200 rows of seats away from you. So, and I mean, I was introduced to acting through theater. I did theater throughout middle school and high school, and I did a couple shows in college. So that was definitely an interesting transition when I started doing more stuff for film, because you really do have to learn to shift what you've learned for the stage to work for the camera.
And what do you find are effective ways to direct actors and actresses, like from the directors?
I mean, I've only directed really like one time, but from my experience directing, I think I like to give the actors a lot of freedom, because I myself am an actor and I know that I like when I'm given a lot of freedom. But I think some of like the best notes I've gotten from directors is just when they tell me to like do things, like they let me do it a bunch of times in different ways just to test it out. Because I think the number one thing with acting is, you know, it's really hard to make it seem like what you're saying is a natural thought. And that's the thing that's hard about acting. Like people think it's easy, but that's actually what's hard. And so I think just practice and repeating the same line over and over again allows you to kind of find which way sounds the most natural, or even like there's multiple ways that can sound natural. Just that's the one thing I like about theater too, is if you're in a show and you get to do it 4 or 5, however many times, you could do one line differently every night, and each time it's true to that night when you were doing it, because the scene might go differently.
And what is your process getting ready for a role? What's your process?
So my process is I like to figure out like what are the circumstances this character is in. So what do I know about this character from the script? So first I look at the text. That's usually my first step, and see what's in the text that I can use for my performance. Because as they say, a well-written piece of writing, you know, gives all the actor they need. Like that's why Shakespeare, people say if you like know how to read and break down Shakespeare, it's the easiest acting in the world because it's written in verse and it already kind of has the inflection built in if you read it like in the iambic pentameter. So that's the first thing I like to look at. And then I like to branch out and say like, okay, what's not in the script that like I as an actor can bring to this role? One time in high school, my theater teacher used to say, you know, every actor should have a secret for their character. And it's something only you know, none of the other characters know. And I really like that idea because it kind of helps you bring a little life to the character, because obviously all humans have secrets that no one else knows. So like when you give a secret to your character, it just adds a nuance to the acting, I think. And yeah, like I said, I really like to work with the text. So one method I really like is Linklater, which comes from Kristen Linklater, who was like acting coach from, I think she's from Scotland. We did that a lot in high school, Linklater work, and that really focuses on the different registers in your voice. So like you have your head voice, your chest voice, the mid-range, and there's so many ways you can play with that to convey different emotions, and you can kind of bend it. I was talking to Alex earlier this morning about how I had this one great director in college. He was a student director. He was awesome. We did a lot of Linklater work, and he really showed how just when you're angry in a script or in a scene, it doesn't mean you have to use your chest voice and yell really loud. Sometimes speaking a line of anger on breath can convey more emotion because you're so like exasperated, you're so mad that you can't even get out the full voice.
Oh, wow. Wow. So there's different voice, like your different parts of your body have different voices that convey different emotions.
Yeah, exactly. Or yeah, you know, you can have the vocal fries. So you speak like a valley girl, and it's all like in the back of your throat. And it's really like, that's a really technical acting thing that I really like. Because obviously there's also method acting, which is, you know, you become the character, and that's all about emotion. And there's different ways of approaching acting, and obviously like it depends on the person. Some people don't want to have to like be the character all day, and they want just a way to get into character just for the scene, and then they can go back to being themselves.
Oh. So do you stay in character between scenes?
I personally don't, but some actors do. It depends on, you know, how you were trained.
What like makes a good, like what is enough information for you, like for you to get into character as an actress?
I mean, it's not necessarily about like how much information is given, but how three-dimensional the character is written. So obviously human beings are flawed, they're not perfect. So if you have a character that has, you know, the good and the bad, and that's written in either the stage directions or their lines. And also this, I think what I've learned too from writing has also helped me as an actor, because in script writing classes, you learn you don't always write exactly what the character means. And that's kind of how humans talk. I mean, unless you're a 5-year-old, most adults don't say what they mean right out because that's considered rude. So you kind of learn how to write that into the script. And then as an actor, you can look at the line and think, okay, this is what's written, but I know that that's not actually what the character means, just from the context of the scene it's in and the relationship to the other character in the scene. So.
Oh, I got you. And how do people get work in this acting profession?
So that is definitely a very tough thing. I would say, I mean, if you're in the Boston, New England area, you can sign up with Boston Casting. They have a database, and you can get work through them. I mean, I've gotten a bunch of background work through them. I've never gotten any major roles. And there's also like CP Casting, and I'm trying to think of like Slate Casting. Those are some of like the New England ones. Definitely take classes, because I think through taking classes, you can meet the right people. I think a lot of this industry, unfortunately, is just about who you know. And if you meet someone who's a great writer, you like to act, you can collaborate together. I mean, that's how I found gotten involved in a lot of projects, is through like just meeting people and collaborating. And if you're both like creative and have the motivation to do a project, you can get it done. Also backstage, that's a big one for actors. You can apply to a lot of things through that. But it's definitely very hard. Yeah. And I think to start with classes to at least have like a baseline of experience helps, because then it also shows like you're taking the time to learn the craft rather than just thinking you're going to be great, which I think
some people definitely do that.
do that, yeah.
I see. And it's a lot of extra work, and there's opportunities around the Boston area, right? Like Black Panther is getting filmed, and we had the Will Ferrell movie and Ryan Reynolds movie filmed
filming,
here in Melrose. Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
cool. Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities in Boston. Unfortunately, like they don't really do principal casting around here still, so you're probably never going to get like your big break in Boston, but it's definitely a good way to crack in, and then you can get things on your resume, and then once you feel ready, you can move to a bigger market. That's always what I've heard for advice, because in the Boston market, it's a smaller pool just because it's not as developed as LA or New York. So if you get your start here, you get some things on your resume, you get experience, you get training, and then you can say move to LA or New York, and you already have that like backup of, oh, well, I've done these independent films in Boston. I've been on a professional set on Black Panther or whatever. So.
And then you can get the lead role, hopefully, when you move to the New York or LA.
Yeah, and I think in those markets, you really do need an agent. I mean, not necessarily these days with like the internet and things like Backstage. You can do a lot yourself, but obviously agents have the connections. But an agent isn't going to sign you if you don't have the experience. So,
you need to get signed by an agent, and to get signed by an agent, you need to have the extra work that you can do here, is what you're saying.
Right, yeah. You can definitely build up your resume here.
Okay, and then how about like joining the Actors Guild?
SAG?
SAG, yeah.
Yeah, so it's actually, you can definitely become SAG eligible in Boston. So basically to join SAG, you just need to work 3 days as background on a union waiver, or 1 day, they call it Taft-Hartley. I'm not really sure why, but that would be like 1 day you get one line and then you're eligible. But I actually became SAG eligible this summer. 2 summers ago, I had done something where I was on a union waiver, and then this summer I worked 1 day as a stand-in, which is a union position, and then I got a union waiver on a set I was on. I think it was Fletch, which was the John Hamm movie they filmed here. So yeah, it's pretty easy to become eligible here if you keep doing the background work. You'll probably eventually get a union waiver. And then they say you have to hold off on joining them until you have experience, because once you join, you can't do non-union work. So if you join too soon, like you don't have the experience on your resume, it's going to be really hard to get the bigger roles.
And you're saying no to roles by joining, because you say no to non-union roles by joining, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But okay, you're also a writer, right? And we'll get into your script later on, folks. That's a little teaser. But what's your process? I think you're a very good writer. And what's your creative process when you're thinking of a new script or a new blog or something like that?
Yeah. So with writing, I'm a bit of kind of a mess. Like, I don't know if I would advise the way I write for other people, because I really just like to, it's weird the way ideas come to me. Like I'll be having writer's block for like 3 months, and then I'll sit down one day and it's like an idea was just, dropped into my head almost. Obviously it wasn't. It was things I got from my environment. But there we go. A nice trailer. Okay. So it'll kind of just seem like it comes to me, and I'll sit down and I'll like be writing for like 6 to 8 hours. I get spurts of creativity, they call it the flow state. And I'll just write, and I'll usually just get out a draft just to get my thoughts on paper, and then I'll go back, and I'm the kind of person, I like to get the first draft done.
Yep.
And then I go back and I do like intense editing. I'm not really much of a planner. I'm trying to become more of a planner because I do want to write a feature. And I think to write a feature, you really need to have a plan before you go in.
A feature-length film, like 2 hours. Okay, yeah.
Whereas with the shorts, I usually don't really have a plan, which is like bad to say. I usually kind of just write. And then, like I said, I go back and I edit a lot, which is, what you're seeing, what I send to other people to read is an edited version. It's not like my initial, thoughts. But I find that helpful personally, because if I'm in a flow state, I just want to get the ideas down, and I don't really want to have to worry about, all the logistic stuff that
just
comes
write
with
everything down.
Yeah.
In bad or good, just write it down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I do that same, like sometimes I write songs, I do it that same way, and then I go back and I revise. But and even in school, that's how I wrote most of my papers.
Yeah.
I wasn't really much of a like, let's do an outline and then write it. I would just write my thoughts, and then I would spend hours editing. And
a lot of the work's editing, right? Like, I'm sure when you write your first draft and then you look at it, however many days later, you're like, oh, this is a lot of it. This isn't, Great. So a lot of it is editing, correct?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, usually I'll get like a couple good lines or good ideas out from that initial draft just because if I'm in that state, you know, I'm feeling like extra creative. But yeah, most of what makes it actually, you know, understandable and logical as like a story comes from the editing stage, definitely.
Okay. And what do you think, because I'm sure you've read a lot of scripts too, what do you think differentiates a really good script from like a mediocre script?
I think it's kind of a writer's ability to capture reality, I guess, and the way people actually speak. That's something I really focus on when I'm writing dialogue is capturing how this character would actually speak. And that doesn't necessarily have to mean how someone in real life would speak, but how would this character in my story speak? And I think just, you know, creating like sympathetic characters that people can have some sort of stake in. I mean, and also, like I said, I'm a big fan of Wes Anderson. I got to see him speak when I was in London. And he said, like, he often writes lines of dialogue that in the real world are kind of like a weird thing to say. People wouldn't really say that. But in his worlds that he creates, that makes sense. So I'm big on world building. I think a good script creates a whole environment, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the world we're living in, but like a version of a world that could exist, I guess.
Ah, interesting. And you have, not to spoil, but you have a new script coming out pretty soon.
Yeah,
right?
I do. I wrote it like end of summer into fall, and yeah, it's a short. It's about like 8 pages long, and I'm gonna be shooting it. Adam's going to help in November. And yeah, it's a pretty simple story. That one kind of, like I said, just came to me one day. I was looking on weird news stories, like I was telling Adam, and I found this weird news story about this aquarium that was like taking pennies out of the water to pay their bills. And then I took that on like a different, you know, track, which you'll see in the script. But yeah, that one news story, and then I sat down, I wrote it. And then obviously I've gone back and done a lot of editing since, but yeah.
How long was that how long did it take you from the thinking of the idea to like the version that you sent to me?
Definitely at least a couple weeks. I mean, the original idea, I was at a cafe because I've had writer's block like all summer. I've been wanting to write things and I've just had no ideas. So I was like, I'm gonna go.
And then like just real quick, do you go days without writing, right? Like do you go days without writing anything, or is that?
No, I write every day, but sometimes it's just like in my journal.
Yeah, okay, I got you.
Because my dad's an English professor, so he grew up, or when I was growing up, he was always like, you should write every day, even if it's just writing one sentence in your journal just to get practice. So he kind of forced me and my sister to keep journals. And at the time, I was kind of annoyed by it, but now I'm so grateful because I feel like people don't think of that, but even just writing in a journal helps you develop, you know, your voice and how you want things to sound. So I think that has really helped me in writing characters that have distinct voices. Because one thing I know is I have a very distinct voice in the way I write. Like the dialogue is always kind of a very distinct style. And I think that's come from all the years I've spent journaling, you know.
Interesting.
So.
But back to the script, it took you a couple of weeks. You had the inspiration for the idea in a cafe.
Yeah, and then I sat down in the cafe. I was sitting there for like 4 hours, and I just wrote it. And then I like took some space from it. I came back to it a couple days later. I tweaked some things. I sent it to some people to read. I got some feedback. And then, I mean, I'll probably still make a couple more changes before the day of shooting, but I have a solid idea now of what I want.
And you got feedback early on in the process, which I hear is always a good thing.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I got feedback probably like one draft in.
And what's the name of it? And just give us like one sentence describing what it's about to give the many millions of listeners out there a little teaser for what it's about.
Okay, so right now it's untitled. I don't have a final name for it, so sorry everyone. But it is about basically a couple who are friends for a really long time, and they reunite after having not seen each other for a long time to kind of hash out, you know, where they're going to go next in their relationship, and will it last or will they break up?
Well, and are you going to star in it?
I am going to star in it, yeah. That's the good thing about being a writer, too, is you get to write parts for yourself. And like I said, I'm good at capturing voices, and obviously, like, that voice is my inner voice. So it kind of works out perfectly because I know exactly how I want the lines delivered.
It's true. It's true. Well, Nicole, thank you so much for coming on the Adam Lou Show. Plug yourself one last time for the listeners out there. Where can they find you?
All right. You can find me on Instagram at Nicole Bates _ and on YouTube, just Nicole Bates.
Yep, and you can find me at aml-creative.com, Instagram AdamLou22. My YouTube channel, I think it's just Adam Lou. And you subscribe to this podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much, Nicole. And listeners, have a good day.
Thank you.